invite 6 at-large City Council candidates to this Lanesville Community Center Forum. Really appreciate your participating, and welcome to all of you in the audience on a very windy night coming out here to listen to the candidates. So just very briefly, I'm Valerie Nelson on the board of the Community Center, and I want to let you know that I sent questions over a week ago, 9 days ago or something, ahead of time to all the candidates, and I will read those one by one so that you get a sense of what they had a little bit of time to think about. And then when that time is over, I'll turn to you in the audience and raise your hand if you'd like to also ask a question for them. So that's the format for tonight. Any questions about? Or are we ready to go? All right. Thank you very much. So the first question is to introduce yourself. What is important for voters to know about your background and the strengths and passions you will bring to the City Council? It can be helpful to have a deep bench of diverse concern for and expertise on the council. So what particular needs in the community might you choose to focus on? For example, would you prioritize and lend a hand on one or two of these possibilities? Would you prioritize affordable and workforce housing, social services and human rights, climate change and coastal flooding, city infrastructure, roads, water, wastewater, environmental restoration, trees, salt, marshes, or others? This is a way where we get to kind of know who you are and where your passions are and what you might really help the community on. So 2 minutes each, starting with Jason.
Hi, thank you for coming tonight. I'm Jason Groh. I'm a current city councilor at large. I've been on for 2 terms. Previously, earlier in this century, a long time ago, I was the Ward 1 city councilor for 2 terms, where I was also on the Budget and Finance Committee as its chair. I'm currently the Planning and Development chair for the subcommittee. What's important to know about me? We moved, my wife Sarah and I, and our daughter Matilda moved here 25 years ago from San Francisco. And I bring that up because one of the things that I learned as a child growing up, living all over the country, we moved quite frequently, probably every year. I think I went to 12 schools before I graduated from high school. And not military, just dysfunctional. And I knew that I wanted stability for my kids. I wanted them to grow up in a place where they were in a neighborhood, where they knew their friends, where they grew up with their friends. And we thought that that was going to happen in San Francisco. In 2000, there was a tremendous housing crisis. The first dot-com boom, I don't know if you remember, came in, and housing for normal people became unavailable. I mean, really unavailable. 90 miles out of San Francisco, unavailable. And we ended up in Gloucester through the machinations of some friends that I went to school with. So we got to Gloucester, and I knew that I wanted this place to be someplace that my kids would live, you know, very Norman Rockwell. Wow, that's fast. Let me just get right to it. We need stability. I come from a background as a photographer, 35 years. That comes from a background of being a journalist. So as a journalist, I am very, very interested in fact and in research and in asking the right questions and digging into the issues that affect our community. I'm a surfer, which probably is a surprise to most of you, but it means that I care very much about our environment. And boy, 2 minutes goes quick.
Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you. You guys got to really go fast.
Hannah, would you like to tell us about yourself?
Sure. My name is Hannah Kimberly. I'd like to thank you for having us here, and thank you all for coming, and those folks who are tuning in as well. I'm a career educator, a community organizer, an advocate for women's rights, human rights, and housing. I see the role of City Council as both a responsibility and an opportunity to put those values into action. Teaching for the last few decades has taught me how to listen, bring people together, and solve problems collaboratively. These are all skills that are essential to legislating and setting policy that reflects our community's real needs. As a civic and community organizer, I built coalitions, manage budgets, and work to ensure accountability. This is the same oversight and fiscal discipline our council must uphold. As an advocate, I fought for fairness, access, and inclusion, which are principles that guide how I would approach every issue before the council, from housing and climate resilience to economic opportunity. My experience working in the community, as well as teaching, has always been about empowering people and making systems work better for everyone, which is exactly what good local government should do. I'm focused on 3 priorities that reflect my values as well as what I've heard from you. Housing that's affordable and sustainable, an approachable government, and environmental stewardship and sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Sean.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sean McQueenie, and I'm an 11-year resident of Gloucester. I've lived, worked, and volunteered all over the city and look to merge that with my background as a high-volume restaurant manager, as well as my various past stints in public service before moving here. As an at-large councilor, I will do my part to be a safeguard for our vulnerable people, of which there are both many and more and more. I will work with fellow councilors if needed, or if possible, to mend the relationship between our downtown city services and our business owners and residents. Patience is running thin with many, and I will do my part to raise levels of compliance, but also respect. Empathy is our most powerful weapon in any sensitive matter, but a proactive assistance from local police must also be realized as a true reality. Every bushel has a bad apple every now and then, but as with all of us, the actions of a few cannot dictate our treatment of any populace. I will also pay due attention to housing and its affordability by leaning on the city to utilize already owned properties that may need rehabilitation as opposed to new builds, although I do plan to support appropriate building in appropriate spaces. I believe we can ease parking restrictions in denser areas of the city with the addition of multiple or rehabbing smaller parking areas as opposed to one large one. This would entice builders to risk buying larger buildings downtown and allow them to make more smaller and affordable spaces as opposed to just a couple luxury apartments within the same skeletal building space. I would prefer, however, to focus my attention as a skilled and persuasive writer to work with officials to locate and apply for grants and aid that is already available but not currently being sought. I plan to apply this same effort to my desire for the city to acknowledge tourism as an important new vein of blood in our city. We have been found, and more importantly, we are growing, and growing costs money.
Thank you, Sean. You'll have time towards the end to add whatever you left out. Thank you. Tony.
Hi, those who don't know you, I'm Tony Gross, and I'd like to thank the Lanesville Community Center for hosting this forum this evening. Those of you who know me, I'm a lifelong resident of Gloucester. I've worked in, I have experience in many careers. I've been a fisherman, worked on the waterfront. I also worked at our wastewater treatment plant, and I was a home inspector, and I've worked in construction. Now, I mention those because these experiences matter. And as you put in here, we need to have a deep bench of diverse concern for an expertise on the council, and I bring that deep bench. I also served on the school committee for 13 years. I know that perspective of this city, which is 50% of our budget. I also was on the City Waterways Board, 8 years as chair, 12 years on there. I was early on in my service, I was the chairman of the state-appointed Citizens Advisory Committee for on-site wastewater treatment. You mentioned just a couple of these issues, but I'm afraid I can't single out any of them. I think that they are all connected. Whether it be housing, infrastructure, environment, climate resiliency, every single one of them is closely knitted together, and we need to address them all simultaneously. And so you need to be able to multitask, and you also need to have experience to guide you through that. That's where my practical experience comes in, to have balanced and informed decisions in anything we make, and I represent the entire city. I don't have an agenda of my own. My agenda is to further this city to be healthy and a great place to live, and we need to protect some of our character, and we also need to know that we have to move into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Patty?
Hi, thank you. Is this on? Yes. I'm Patty Ann Page, a 50-year resident of Gloucester and a long-term contributor to the community. To touch on some of my background, I served on the board of Enduring Gloucester, a literary blog with the renowned Peter Anastas. I serve on the board of the Gloucester Fishermen's Wives Association. I have represented the seafood industry working with the city's seafood marketing program, Gloucester Fresh, collaborating with Economic Development Director Sal DiStefano. Through many international seafood shows, we've hosted international seafood buyers, educating them on wild Gloucester seafood, networking them to market sources, which contributes to economic development. The 2025 Harbor Plan is the third plan I've participated in. I've contributed ad hoc to the Fisheries Commission and Pesticide Reduction Committee. I work with the Downtown Neighborhood Association, a neighborhood group creating a broad sense of community. I seek to invite, inform, and involve the public into the process on issues important to them: service, advocacy, and communication. As founder and director of the high school sailing team, my community focus would be public access to the waterfront. Providing boating opportunities for families to participate in sailing and rowing is a community activity. I know my hope is to be appointed as a city council liaison to the Waterways Board or the Fisheries Commission. I would continue my advocacy in the downtown neighborhood through the Downtown Neighborhood Association. Environmental justice neighborhoods rarely have a community voice. Through this work, we strive to create community with purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Barnaby?
Hi, I'm Barnaby Prendergast. I obviously have a strange accent. I come from the UK. I grew up in London. I've been in America for just over 20 years, and I've been in Gloucester for just under 20 years. I studied law. I worked for the International Planned Parenthood Federation before I moved here, where I was pretty much in charge of IT globally. I was also chairman of the union there. Since I came to Gloucester, I had a daughter, Lola. She's now 18 and off at university. While I've been here, I've done various bits of volunteering. I am on the Gloucester Clean City Commission. I am an advocate with Housing for All Gloucester. Housing is one of my big interests. It was a problem in London. It was a problem in Charlestown, which is where we first lived when we came to the US, and it's become more and more of a problem here. And that's the lack of housing and the expense of housing, obviously, not the most other issues are secondary to that. I spend a lot of time outdoors. I do carpentry and odd jobs is how I make my living currently. I was a commercial fisherman, albeit on the back of the boat. I was a sternman on a lobster boat for 2 years, so I have a working knowledge of the waterfront, even if as a junior deckhand. But it's a hard and very fun and rewarding industry, which is, like lots of things, very bound up in regulations that aren't always constructive to growth and progress. And as far as issues, I would echo what Tony said, really. The issues posed in the question are all relevant, all important, and all need addressing. We have to, at the same time, be very pragmatic about what we can do.
Thank you very much for that. It's a delight to hear about a great diversity in background and interests, and we appreciate that. So now I'd like to segue to the public and participation by the public in government. And I've asked for really specific examples as much as generalities about an approach. So many of us in the room will remember 20 or 30 years ago, public participation in Gloucester government was pretty high. Crowds showed up at annual budget and other city council hearings. Volunteers actually led in the development of various plans. city councilors held frequent meetings throughout the city. Do you believe it is important to rebuild public engagement in the processes of government? And here, with some specifics if you can, if so, how? I'd add to that after a few high-profile conflicts in the last few years over topics like housing and waterfront development, do you have some specific ideas for how to rebuild trust and civil discussions among opponents? How can you help as a city councilor deal with the worsening polarization that in one incident added on to another has developed? And please try to be as specific as you can as to how you would help deal with public participation. Hannah, why don't you start?
Sure. Yes, I absolutely believe rebuilding public engagement in Gloucester's government is important. When people feel heard, they're more likely to participate, and when they participate, government works better. That said, many residents feel overwhelmed between work and family obligations and the constant noise of national politics. It's easy to see or to feel that local government is either too complex or that one person's voice won't make a difference. But we've seen recent examples that prove otherwise. Our new comprehensive plan was an excellent model of inclusive community engagement. The City Council and the Planning Department worked hard to reach residents where they are, hosting meetings in a box in all 5 wards and encouraging local organizations to hold their own sessions. And sometimes the city government can't do it all. The Yes for Gloucester campaign was a great example of collaboration across the community. Organizers worked closely with city councilors, civic organizations, and local leaders to share accurate information about the MBTA Communities Act and what it meant for Gloucester. That kind of partnership-based outreach helps counter misinformation and encourages open, respectful conversations about complex issues like housing and waterfront development. So as a city councilor, my goal would be to continue getting the facts out to our community in clear, approachable ways. I would also keep building connections through committees and civic groups because that is where real engagement happens. Thank you.
Sean.
Gloucester is a casual yet professional town, and it needs casual yet professional leadership. If we as residents feel we aren't being represented, we will see a divide form. Bad news, imagery, inappropriate behavior, and scandals have riddled our city departments with little other than Facebook to turn to. For too long, our city has been at odds over so many various things that you can't draw a distinct line down the middle, but something more resembling of the original game of Snake. I believe I can use my leadership style and my professional position outside of the council to collaborate with the public on a regular basis. In my 11 years of bartending, I have seen many of Gloucester's residents at its highest points and at its lowest points, in celebration and sorrow, and I do believe that my ability to communicate with people on that level will strengthen my position as a city councilor. Like negativity, positivity is a powerful wave to ride. We as a legislature must pave the road with integrity as the leaders of our community. We must be empathetic, patient, and temperate. We must also be firm and deliberate in our actions. But we must be open to hearing all angles, sides, and variations of any issue, because I feel that if something is worth saying, then it is worth hearing. As we've all seen, change can create conflict. I am prepared to remain constant that through the process that we go through, that it will be beneficial for all of us, especially our future generations. It is often said that a few eggs must be broken to make an omelet, but I prefer the 1 or 2 eggs in a larger scheme with time, measurement, tact, and patience that it takes to bake a cake. Not agreeing with someone cannot be the end of the conversation. We must get back to being neighbors. Different pockets of different people doing different things with different agendas make a community on paper, of course, but Gloucester has that something special. It is like a special sauce on a burger, and the recipe is so secret, and before we pass it on to the next generation, we need to make sure we have those measurements right.
Thank you. Tony.
Yeah, In order to increase public participation, we have to recognize that public trust has been down. It's been eroding over the last 30 years, public trust of government. And it's been, not just on a local level. It was driven from forces outside and has filtered into our everyday life. In order to rebuild that, we have to do it with facts, transparency, and respect. Now, we've increased the ease of participation in meetings somewhat through Zoom. It's made it a lot easier for people to be able to be at home, have supper while they watch, or even more conveniently, they can watch later and allow themselves to be, which is particularly important when an issue is being discussed at a committee or a board level that will come before us or at a board where there's a public hearing. And so you can become educated on what those issues are, so you can come prepared to that public hearing to make your voice heard. And I think that needs to be emphasized more throughout the neighborhoods. We need to redo our city's website. We constantly, that's one of the biggest complaints we hear, is that while everything is there, and I have learned how to navigate it, it is not the simplest thing to do. Now, this takes both time and money. So working with the administration after the election, we will try to find out where that funding could come from. Council needs to act more civilly and accessibly for both the public and towards each other. And the residents deserve clear information and a voice that they feel they have a voice in each councilor. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Patty?
I would invite, inform, and involve the public on matters important to them. I would amend the process and bring the public in on the front end of the issues to participate and provide input. Public hearings held at the culmination of a long-worked initiative is akin to kabuki theater. Public input comes too late to significantly influence outcomes. To parachute in at the last minute is to no avail. There needs to be public resources allocated to support civic engagement. Currently, there's no location available to host simple ward meetings in the downtown area. We might look towards the Sawyer Free Library community room for collaboration. I believe the city should set aside funds to cover rental compensations for our public buildings, which could be utilized for more civic engagement and more public use, particularly City Hall. Getting to the facts of issues is extremely important, and when our community development brings forward issues, it really is difficult for the public to consume this in what I call planning legalese. Citizens had to become citizen planners and really consume all the zoning that came forward. It was complex, it was confusing, and it changed over time. And when new information came out, it wasn't a matter of being misinformed, it was a matter of adjusting with new information. So I do think there is a lot of room for improvement, and I would be very willing to communicate and spend that time with the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Barnaby?
So the question, do you believe it's important to rebuild public engagement and in the process of government? I think unequivocally that the answer to that has to be I do, very strongly. As a councillor, my plan is to make myself available and have an office hour and actually sit down and have a place in it. I haven't decided where or anything like that, obviously, because that would be presumptuous, but actually make myself physically available for people to come in and sit down and talk to me about their issues. In terms of the divisions in the city, it's very obvious that there are people who pit groups against each other, and some of that is really quite unpleasant, and it's, obviously as an outsider, I've been a target of some of those things, and there's an unpleasant current of division that doesn't need to exist. As a city, we're going to be successful if we pull together in the same direction for the same successes, which can benefit everyone. They don't have to just be, oh, well, people who have just arrived can only have new housing, or people who have only been living here forever can have new housing. Neither of those positions are tenable or sensible. So building trust, it's very difficult for people to get to grips with the processes. There's no doubt about that. They're complicated. They're complicated for a reason. A lot of the things that exist to stop things like corruption and backroom deals and so on. But it's difficult to get to terms with how all of that happens. I think we should consider doing things like how it's made videos for a 3-minute explanation of what zoning is, similar things to that, to really help people understand how government works and re-engage them in it.
All right, thank you very much. All different answers. I appreciate your response. So we're going to talk now about housing. Oh, I'm sorry, because
I pretty much was going to say everything they said, so yeah.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Go
That's
ahead,
all right.
Jason.
So I'm used to being overlooked. I would very much agree with pretty much everything I've heard here tonight. I will add a couple things. When I was on the council earlier as a Ward 1 councilor, you could not get the packet or the agenda online, period. And it's one of the things I immediately advocated for, because I felt people needed to be able to access the same information the city councilors were looking at. Previously, we'd get a giant 2-inch thick packet of papers that we'd have to go through. But it was my efforts, I think, in that first couple of councils, getting that information onto our website. And as imperfect as it is, there is a tremendous wealth of information there. It is sometimes difficult to navigate, but you have access to more information, I think, than anybody has ever had in terms of Gloucester politics and Gloucester, what's happening in Gloucester. Plus, as Tony pointed out, we've got Zoom meetings. We have Zoom meetings for every board and commission, pretty much, that I can imagine. So while people aren't necessarily showing up at meetings, they are definitely watching these things, and people are engaging at that level. So I'm not entirely sure that we've seen a complete lack of engagement. The other thing is that 90% of what we do as the city councilor is really, really boring stuff. Okay, it's really mundane. It's getting things through the process, and that's what you elect us to do. It's when we get to the big issues, the zoning issues, we had. I can't tell you how many meetings we had during the CPI process and the 3A process, and before that, the zoning changes. The idea is we have to listen to the community. We have to make ourselves available. I am always available on the phone, via email, however you need to get a hold of us. It's something that we have to take on as counselors, to hear what you have to say, hear your questions, and find a way to help you get the information you need. Plus, I want to kick in really quick saying, subscribe to the Gloucester Daily Times. Engagement in the public is about getting information, and that is a tremendous source for us to do.
Right, good, Dan.
I'll take that as a,
I'm sorry again, Jason,
That's okay.
for that.
No, I wanted to get it in there.
And another different answer, so we appreciate the diversity in thought there. So now we're going to turn to the big ticket items that a number of you have mentioned, housing and economic development, and in two parts. So on housing, and not just general principles, but what kind of action items do you have in mind? So residents have been concerned for years about the interrelated problems of affordable housing and overdevelopment. I would say I've asked a lot of these questions 6 years ago, 4 years, 2 years ago, and then this year. In your view, how did we get into this predicament? How did we get here? Where so many of us living here and our children cannot afford to buy or rent in the overheated real estate property markets. There are many different policies and investments that could be made going forward. What measures to deal with the housing crisis are on your list for actions to be taken by city government? And we'll start with Sean.
Not incredibly long ago, we had multiple generations living together in the same homes. As times went on, homes were built on adjacent properties to allow for expansion. As larger parcels were developed commercially, both residentially and industrially, around the various landscapes of the city, the spatial requirements for new neighborhoods have become increasingly more sparing, sparking the need for new innovative thinking. Coming from Peabody myself, I did what many transplants did, came up the line. I moved to Manchester first, then Gloucester a few years later. Fast forward to today, and now we have our own Starbucks and Chipotle, and as I was reminded today, J.Crew. And some of us can almost see the Target symbol somewhere at Gloucester Crossing. To get past today's overdevelopment, we should consider rezoning where and how we can build. By lessening the tension in some areas, we can alleviate it in others. We must also be aware that we are trending towards being a larger city than we already are, and must be vigilant of that as well. If where we are already isn't scary, imagine what it could be in 15 or 20 years or more if we aren't careful with what we do now. While we are still a smaller city, I would also like to get a better understanding of our AMI comparatively to the Boston metro area. I'm sure there are many people in this room that can educate me on that right this second. But it is my very basic understanding that Gloucester's median AMI is only 80% of the regional figure of $112,000 and change. This is unfortunately, I'm gonna skip that. What I can do effectively is work with the city economic coordinator and hopefully the grant writers and/or the firms we can hire to do that for us, to ensure we are doing everything we can to get every dime we can. Unless I'm mistaken, the city of Gloucester does not have anyone applying for grants, and to me, that is unacceptable. I would also ask her for help with our downtown businesses and appearances. Just like we eat with our eyes, we should strive with pride to keep our streets clean and weed-free, and yes, we all loved the lights.
Thank you, Sean. Tony, housing.
Yeah, housing. So housing is not just a local issue, it's national, it's global. You know, we can take small measures. This past year I sponsored, and the council fortunately agreed with me for the short-term rental ordinance that was in response to keeping year-round rentals. I mean, it'd be interesting to note that there's over 30 short-term rentals on Main Street. Those are apartments that were always year-round rentals. So it did not just go to outer neighborhoods, it was right in the inner city also. That's, you know, that's one of the efforts that we've needed to do that I put forward. Zoning, when you do zoning update, I think that during the development process, the public needs to be brought into it before it winds up actually in the planning board. The administration, I think, Gloucester needs to recognize what it wants to look like in the future. And it is up to us, because we all live in the neighborhoods that say, affordable housing, the old adage is affordable housing sounds great until there's an address. And we need to recognize those addresses are in our own neighborhoods, and we need to work together to come up with solutions to try to help build more housing so that our folks can live here. Doing nothing is not an option. Let's just face that fact. And we have to balance, growth with consideration of the character of the neighborhoods, and we need to maintain that we want these to be livable and available to working families. Talked about the AMI. I met with HUD, the federal administrator for the local region of HUD, and they refused to discuss changing the Gloucester AMI, but I made the effort to meet with them and discuss that.
Thank you, Tony. Patty?
The economy has changed dramatically. What one income could afford some years ago is now unattainable on two solid incomes. $100,000 down payment is more than a year's salary. A number of speakers have noted it is common that homeowners cannot afford to purchase the homes they currently live in. Living in a desirable area like Gloucester translates into the real estate mantra of location, location, location. Destination marketing has been successful, but discovery comes at a cost as added pressures to the housing market. I would look towards public-private partnerships to build housing, both rental units and units for ownership. There is, of course, a place in the market for mandated affordable units. However, low-cost projects which could be deed restricted to rent or sell for less than current market rates and regional AMI standards could be dedicated to Gloucester families and should be exempt from regional affordability units. I look towards examples like the condos in Rocky Neck or Alpa Road. These units, the Alpa Road units, as models going forward. Think about Asbury Park in Hamilton if you know it. It's a very quaint, small, village-type development of single-family and some duplex homes, and really works in those neighborhoods. This evening, the Planning Board is holding a public hearing on inclusionary ordinance. This change will reduce the number of units from 6 or more to 4 or more units, which will now require affordable units. We saw affordable units were required at 8. Many developers built 7. When they were 6, they built 5. Will reducing the affordable units to include 4 be a disincentive for developers to build? Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Patty. Barnaby.
Okay, so housing has been one of my things for a few years. We have made lots and lots of plans over the decades. We've looked at how much more housing we need. We have always said we need more affordable housing. We've come out with plans. And then when it's actually come down to changing zoning to enable those things to happen, we say no. We make it really difficult. And we've done that for decades. And so why is it the way it is now? It's because we've underproduced for a long time. That has left a lot of people in a position where they're stuck in a large home that they can't afford to move out of because there is no small home for them to move into. All of the lower value, lower cost homes that were on the market after we'd had several years of very low interest rates, they are all now expensive homes too. So we have the production issue, and we have to own that and say, yes, we do have to do something about production. It's not the only solution to the housing crisis, and it's not going to make anyone happy about overdevelopment. I mean, and these are regional issues. Gloucester suffers it particularly acutely because we actually had a lower value housing market than some of our neighbours. You know, the individual homes cost less. So now that they've come up to the same values as as people can get mortgages on, basically, we're out of affordable housing, the natural affordable housing that we used to have. The comprehensive plan talks a lot about housing production and things that we could be doing, using the available resources that we have in the city, using land that is not currently being used for anything at all. And what the council can do most of all is to facilitate private and charitable organisations to come in and build. Okay.
There is
Jason.
so much to talk about on this. We've touched on a number of issues here. I'm going to try to get through it. Again, I want to get back to the fact that I left San Francisco because I couldn't afford a home for my family. I'm now living in a house that I can't afford. My children, 3 of them, adults, cannot afford to live in Gloucester, period. They're all college educated. They all graduated from Gloucester schools with honors. We've cut out an entire sector of our children in our community from here. Issues that we need to look at. 30 years ago or so, we put in some protectionist zoning. We oversized building lot sizes. We need to re-examine whether or not those are most appropriate. We need to re-examine whether setbacks are most appropriate. During the 3A discussion, we talked about the fact that houses had to be on a 5,000 square foot lot, and yet the majority of homes in central Gloucester are on 3,500 square foot lots. It made no sense whatsoever. So we need to do some serious tuning on that. I want to seriously look at 40R zones where we can talk about mixed-use residential small retail units. Possibly, the Reimagining Railroad Avenue plan from 2014 is just as relevant today as it was in 2014. So that's a 40R. The zoning amendments that we came up with, the planning board came up with several years ago, were all directly from the housing production plan. So as Barnaby says, we do all this work to plan, to think about ways to change things for the better. And then when it comes right down to it, we bottle up. We don't do it. We back off and we worry about whether or not we're going to offend people. The fact of the matter is we need to make housing affordability a primary issue. That means every single neighborhood in the city has to bear some responsibility for that. And we can. We can do that, and it will not change your quality of life.
Thank you, Jason. Hannah.
Gloucester's housing challenges did not happen overnight. For years, our zoning and housing policies favored single-family homes, while construction costs and demand for coastal living have continued to rise. At the same time, wages have not kept up. The result is that Gloucester simply doesn't have enough housing options to meet the range of incomes of people who work here, raise families here, or already live here, but are struggling to keep up with mortgages or rent. I know this personally. My husband and I both work full-time. We have good jobs, but we rent here in Gloucester because we cannot afford to buy here. We qualify for a mortgage, just not for the prices of homes that are currently on the market. And like so many others, we're at the mercy of a landlord who continues to raise our rent. A couple summers ago, she came to visit Gloucester because she lives in Europe and said, I'm gonna need to raise the rent by $600 a month. And that's market rate. So when I talk about housing affordability, I'm not speaking from theory, I'm living it. So I believe in electing someone who understands that firsthand really matters. We've also treated affordable housing and overdevelopment as if they're opposites, when in fact, thoughtful, well-planned development can help us protect community character while keeping Gloucester livable for the people who are already here. So as a city councilor, I would support zoning updates that allow mixed-use development and better utilize commercial spaces with housing units so people at different life stages and income levels can find a place to live. I'd also make sure that we're using our Affordable Housing Trust and Community Preservation Acts funds strategically to support nonprofit and mixed income housing that serves local needs.
Thank you all. Very different questions and answers again. So now we're going to turn just briefly to economic development. And for those who are unaware, the city has recently hired an economic development coordinator, Emily Sloan. Welcome, Emily. Are there one or two specific parts of the Gloucester economy that you would like to make sure that she focuses on as priorities, and why? For example, downtown small businesses, fishing and marine industrial, tourism, manufacturing and the industrial parks, construction of new and rehabbed housing, healthcare, or other. She's going to have to prioritize, we already know. So what would be some of your priorities for economic development now that we have a new coordinator? Tony.
Well, again, I think all of those need to be focused on. To support small business, they're working right now on the business improvement district for downtown businesses. Also, I believe that they need more help from the city for keeping Main Street itself, we're just talking Main Street itself, clean. That's important. Also, during seasons, decorating the Main Street. We need to promote tourism responsibly. Right now, it is our #1 blue economy engine, and we would hope that the marine industrial, not complex, but businesses, which we need to work with mass development on the State Fish Pier, and we've also seen a resurgence in some of the businesses downtown. I mean, not downtown, on the waterfront. We've seen a couple of young businesses start up, and we need to work with the EDIC and the new wastewater treatment plant will help people with less requirements for pre-treatment, which will allow them to operate.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Patty.
Gloucester's economic opportunities.
1 minute, by the way, sorry. I wrote you 1 minute.
All right, can we start that again? Gloucester's economic opportunities lie in ocean economies. Our proximity to the water is foundational. It stands as Gloucester's comparative advantage. Gloucester's fishermen feed the nation. The harvest of local, wild, clean seafood has a future because food security is national security. Investments in restructuring fleets by modernizing vessels and shoreside facilities for ease and efficiencies is warranted. Providing training and gap transfer subsidy programs to enable the younger generations To invest in fishing businesses is critical for its succession. The trades are collapsing under a lack of skilled labor. There should be solid investments made in local vocational schools and infrastructure. A marine mechanic division should be an easy fit in Gloucester. I assure you, if students could rebuild motors and test them at the high school ramp, there would be interest. Warren Waugh's recent contribution to the high school auto shop is a shining example of what can be done. Philanthropy is one method to be explored and encouraged.
Thank you, Patty. 1 minute, Barnaby, thanks.
A whole minute. Just on Emily, specifically healthcare, she's a great athlete, and I've run with her for quite a while with Team Gloucester. She's quite a runner. So I'm sure there will be developments there, no doubt. But the downtown small businesses, fishing and marine, all of these things are interconnected. Tourism has actually been a mainstay of Gloucester for a very long time. We used to have hotels in a hotel in Magnolia that could host 3,000 guests overnight. And so building on the strengths that we have, obviously the blue economy, the marine economy, we also have some very smart people around town who are chomping at the bit to become marine industry innovators, to test new boat projects, new shapes of hull, people who want to pressure the federal government to alter the way they regulate fishing, which I think would be a very good thing.
Thank you, Barnaby. A lot in 1 minute. And you, Jason.
Take an auctioneering class here. Yes, indeed. So one of the primary things that we have going against us in terms of bringing companies here and industry here is the fact that our actual infrastructure, our electrical infrastructure, our internet infrastructure is below quality for 21st century businesses. So I would like to see our EDIC director working with utilities to upgrade that functionality of our industrial parks, because businesses won't come here if they can't afford to operate. If they don't have the electricity, they don't have the basic structure. So we need infrastructure development, and I think that's an important thing. On the small business front, again, the 40R prospect of putting a multi-use overlay district downtown to encourage the development of small retail spaces and build businesses. Plus, we have to be able to have workers who live here. People can't afford to live here making $15 an hour. Okay, they can do that somewhere else, but they're not going to do it here. So we need to get good jobs for people to be able to afford to stay here.
Hannah.
I've just scratched half my answer out. We need stronger support for our small, locally owned businesses, which are essential to our identity as a vibrant, walkable downtown. We need continued investment in our working waterfront and marine industries. Fishing, marine research, and blue tech innovation can coexist and create good, sustainable jobs as they do in other Massachusetts coastal cities. We also need economic development and housing that need to work hand in hand. Jobs don't mean much if the people who work here can't afford to live here. When we link those priorities, Gloucester's economy stays strong and inclusive.
Thank you. Sean.
I'm personally hoping to work with her on rehab projects throughout the city. I visited Central Grammar recently and was blown away just solely by the history depicted on the walls of the lobby. I could feel the Gloucester pride in the halls. I would love to see future projects reflect similar thoughtful historical homage to prior times and historical events, as well as strengthening our housing community across the board. I'm also going to go back to my tourism thing from before. We must assess the level of funding for Discover Gloucester, which is just about $50,000 a year, and focus our funding on the year-round tourism, attainable goals for the city, and catch up on the ever-evolving tourism trends that power so many of our seasonal and year-round businesses. This is not to insinuate support for the overflow of short-term rentals in any way, though acknowledging them as a part of it is inevitable.
So, thank you. You started it. Right. Okay.
We started. We're okay.
We're okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for helping. This is all hands on deck. This question is the last substantive one I sent you, and is possibly the most significant one as we go into the coming years, including with the city council and the mayor's office and the public. And that has to do with city spending. So let me read what I wrote to you. A lot of demands for city capital projects have been arising recently. We know them. Work on private roads, new water lines, another consolidated elementary school, Plum Cove and Beeman, building a new or rehabbed fire station, and more. The gorilla in the room is a potential $200 to $300 million bill for upgrading, which would include the interest payments, for upgrading the wastewater treatment plant to secondary treatment standards. Added to the infrastructure burden is our unfunded pension system debt of approximately $150 million. And as our state representative and senator are both predicting, we are very likely, if not certain, to see losses in federal and state funding, both for capital projects and for operational expenses. So given all that of fiscal strain on the city, what are your ideas for how we can manage our way through these escalating and competing demands on our tax base and on our water and sewer rates? And how would you propose the public in setting priorities and not just improving one project at a time on a piecemeal basis? So start with you, Patty.
The Capital Improvements Advisory Board could be utilized to coordinate with department heads and on the city and school side on long-term planning and emergency needs to set priorities of projects. Where will the money come from? The only revenue source of a municipality is the tax base. Grant funding subsidizes a specific project. The principal of the wastewater treatment plant is estimated to be $200 million. The payback with interest would be more than $300 million over the life of that loan. Excuse me. The city has filed an engineering design extension until 2028. This will result in a short delay of the financial impact. However, delays will likely increase costs. The wastewater treatment plant services a population of less than 50,000. In the scope of state and federal funding, this is a low priority. It is unlikely Gloucester will receive significant amounts of grant funding. The public needs to have some data-driven financial projections on these costs. I don't know who might be responsible for that, but I think it's time that we start laying out some real-life scenarios. Are there going to be assessments to Essex and Rockport for their portions? That's a fair question. Ultimately, this looks to be a crushing financial blow across the tax base, with higher property assessments, higher real estate taxes, and more water and sewer costs, pricing out the lower and middle income base, furthering Gloucester into a bedroom community status. I am not sure what the fiscal answer will be.
Thank you, Patty. Barnaby.
Okay, so the comprehensive plan comes into this again. This is addressed to some extent in that document. A lot of time and effort went into producing things looking forward at long-term planning. The financial manual, I've forgotten its exact name, but there has recently been released a financial manual for how city finances are to be projected and looked at for the future. So yeah, we have some coordination, lack of information perhaps, but I think that really is the administration's job, and they, as far as I can tell, are doing it and doing it quite competently currently. It's just the usual thing of getting the information out to people. Yes, the numbers are huge and quite scary. I mean, we know what the 30 million that we spent on East Vet School cost us per year on our tax bills. We know what the increase, the sewerage improvements cost us on our tax bills, so we can make an educated guess at what that $200 million is going to hit us on an average basis. We are very close to our budget limits. There is not a lot of slack in terms of reallocating funds. We are running at capacity really in terms of what our staff do. So it's difficult to see how, personally, I find it difficult to see how we're going to get through this without putting it to the vote, to the whole city. You won't find many people talking about that as an option because we have not been successful in the past. But at some stage, we might have to say to people, look, we need a step increase in our taxes because we're not making enough. We haven't had enough new growth to cover a lot of these expenses. And that's where we are.
Well, thank you for that, Barnaby. Jason?
I'm going to continue the sunshine here. The fact of the matter is that 95% of our budget, city budget, is already calculated into contracts and services and debt service. We have very, very little latitude in our budget process. So there's not a lot of slack to play with. The fact that we've got these projects that come up, like the wastewater treatment plant, is that Gloucester loves to play kick the can. We have a tremendous history of ignoring the responsibility of getting projects done, waiting for another day, waiting for another generation, and we have inherited this from the generation before us. So we are constantly catching up, and every time we delay projects, it costs more. So we need to buckle down, and we need to take responsibility for what we need to get done. And Barnaby's absolutely right. This is going to come at the expense of rate increases, and it should come at some point at the expense possibly of a Prop 2.5 override or a debt exclusion override, because there's no other way to pay for this. I mean, everybody wants to keep the services the same, but nobody wants to pay for the increased cost of those services. And I would be willing to listen to anybody who can tell me how we're going to pay for a $200 million project that is very likely to lose federal funding and by extension state funding without raising what we have to pay for it. Okay, it cannot happen. All right, someone has to pay those bills, and it's going to be us, because Patty Ann is right. We don't measure up on the blip of importance when it looks at national rates of infrastructure improvements. We need to get everything we can, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to us, and it's going to come down to us stopping the process of ignoring our responsibility to get things done.
Thank you. Hannah?
I recognize that Gloucester faces serious financial pressures. We have aging infrastructure already.
You've been talking for ages.
We have aging infrastructure, competing capital needs, and limited resources. I'm not on the city council, but I understand that these issues demand careful planning, transparency, and honest communication with residents about what Jason was talking about, what the city can and cannot afford. I believe the best first step is to look at the full picture rather than treating projects one at a time. Gloucester needs a clear, prioritized critical plan that lays out what's essential for public health and safety, like water, sewer, and wastewater treatment, and the wastewater treatment plant, and what can be phased over time. We need to pair that with realistic funding strategies, including seeking whatever funding might be, whatever grants might be possible. I would rely on the expertise of our finance department and the new economic development coordinator. But I'd also make sure that the public had a seat at the table. That means open discussions, accessible information, and community workshops where residents can weigh in on priorities before projects are approved. I see this as a shared responsibility. Maintaining infrastructure that protects our environment and public health while keeping taxes and rates manageable. I would view my role as a counselor to ask clear questions, to be transparent, and help residents understand how today's decisions affect tomorrow's costs.
Thank you, Hannah. Sean?
Something I'm interested is in learning more of is the integration of a potential municipal energy program in Gloucester. I've been asked by enough people that I am curious as well to know if this would open up the opportunity for more alternative energies, i.e. on our schools and larger buildings downtown. Assuming it would incentivize more people to add and rely on green energy, on municipal electric and potentially solar, why not, Energy department would provide more reliable jobs for members of the community while generating clean energy for the city. I would also caution our developers to be wary while designing our new facilities of going for too much tech or too much flash. Every room of every facility we build does not have to be smarter than everyone sitting inside of it. How much technology really needs to go into a certain building isn't an area of my expertise, but I'm willing to bet that it's easy to overdo very easily. Energy efficient lighting is fantastic, but if no one is shutting the lights off, what's the point? In the effort of transparency, I feel as though the public has a right to know how the city is spending their tax dollars and should help to decide how we navigate through the seeable and unforeseeable projects that arise. More importantly, we as a government need to deliver a more maximum return for our dollar. Bigger is not always better, but it is always more important to do it right the first time, whatever it is. Something I have come to enjoy is attending various meetings for various groups throughout town, and it is only in these settings that the voice of a neighborhood or a group of similar people is heard. I have heard also on more than one occasion that it is unusual for a city councilor or candidate for that matter to attend such a thing. If elected, my priority will be to hear your voices and, more importantly, echo them right back into the ears that need to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And last, Tony.
Hey, thank you. So let's start with the elephant in the room here, since we're in Lanesville, right down the street from Plum Cove. As far as I know, there are no plans for consolidating Beaman and Plum Cove. So just let's take that off the table. We must plan and not react. Now, the comprehensive plan lays out the unanimously voted by the Capital Improvements Advisory Board's guidelines and procedures for 10-year planning. And we need to make certain as councilors that the administration follows through and implements this 10-year planning. And it needs to be clear, transparent, for all to be able to understand. Residents need to be able to have access to the data. They need to have access to what our priorities are, and they need to know what our outcomes will be. We've had to exercise fiscal discipline now for a couple of decades. We have pared down now we're at the point of, if we continue to cut our budgets, we will be cutting services to our residents, and that's not something I think anybody wants to have. Now, as far as the $200 million wastewater treatment plant, I know that right now we are actually seeking help through the state revolving loan program that does offer some forgivable loans on that. So hopefully we'll be able to get at least $100 million out of that group, out of low interest rate loans. Answer Patty's question, yes, Essex and Rockport are going to be held accountable for their share. And that's it.
All right, thank you all, and I appreciate, it's not all sunshine necessarily, and so it's good to hear. Let's bring some sober talk in here too. So the last question is really open-ended. It's your chance to, we call it, you want to make a campaign pitch again, or add in anything else that you wanted to respond to or couldn't include, and you have 2 minutes to do what you'd like. Barnaby.
Okay, I'll start with a point about the budgets, which, sorry to come back to this, but I should have mentioned it before. We have a cap of the overall cap, so the total amount of money we're allowed to raise as a city is limited with an annual increase of 2.5%. We have had inflation for a few years higher than that 2.5%. Effectively, that's a budget cut. So although the department has been very conservative, the finance department has been very conservative in order to put money into capital improvement funds and so on, we really are up against it on the budgeting front. The lines are going to cross, and very soon we're going to have higher financial commitments than we have income for. And that's going to involve borrowing and so on. So anyway, that was what I was going to say in terms of my vote for me. pitch is, as the council, what we can do is make things easy or we can make things difficult. I believe we should be facilitating Gloucester's progress. We can't stop change, but we can shape it. And I want to do that from the basis of evidence, rationality, pragmatism, and genuinely looking long-term at the future of Gloucester, as well as short-term at the immediate issues that we absolutely have to address. And I'm going to give up those 30 seconds because I think you've probably had enough by now.
Can I have them? Can I
Okay,
have his
thank
30
you very
seconds?
Jason, whatever you'd like. 2
Yes,
minutes.
I'm just going to lay it out here. I've got one agenda, really, frankly, and that is creating a community for my children to stay here if they so choose. At this point, right now, that's not a possibility, and I think that we have a lot of hard work ahead of us if we're going to try to regain the ground that we've lost in that regard. My wife works at the Open Door. We see on a daily basis the strain that working families have in this community and how difficult it is for them to make ends meet. And she will tell you that, given a choice, people will give up food before they will risk being homeless. Okay, this is a really, really tough environment to be in for people in the middle and working class. As far as my concerns are, I want to, housing affordability, we've talked about it. I think it's an existential question in our future. If we don't begin to address it and find a way to make housing more affordable, all is going to be lost. Excellence in education, obviously, I demand that. I've had that, my kids had that. We have it in our schools. I've always said we have a real problem selling our schools. We have a lot of great things going on in our schools, so we've got to continue that and fund it properly. Economic investment that brings in well-paying jobs. It's not enough just to bring jobs. We've got to be jobs that people can afford to live on. They've got to have living wages. They've got to be more than $15 an hour. They've got to be jobs that they allows them to stay in their community. Infrastructure improvements I mentioned earlier. This supports business. This supports residents. This is all stuff we need to do. We need to act locally on the global climate scale. Absolutely need to do everything we can in terms of that front. And then we need to, this is something I really want to get, we need to respect, encourage, value, and celebrate the diversity of our community. That is what Gloucester is built on, and it needs to remain. That is a fundamental core value, I think, in this community, and I urge you all to embrace that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Hannah.
All right, I'm rolling with a pitch. I believe that when we listen, collaborate, and plan with both compassion and data, we can build a Gloucester that works for everyone. My experience over the past decade as the president of the League of Women Voters of Cape Ann, my work with the Gloucester Human Rights Commission, my work with Women's Equality Cape Ann, and my work with Housing for All Gloucester has all inspired me to run for Councilor at Large. I believe in housing that's affordable and sustainable, approachable government, and environmental stewardship and sustainability. I'm proud to be pro-data, pro-safety, and pro-community input, because good governance means not just talking about ideas, but measuring incomes, adjusting when necessary, and always centering people over politics. At heart, I'm a teacher, and teaching has taught me that progress comes with collaboration, curiosity, and care. As your counselor, I'll bring those same values to every conversation and every vote. So please vote for me. I'm number 2 on the ballot on November 4th. Thank you.
And Sean.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here tonight. I am very much so looking forward to this opportunity to be your city councilor. In my 11 years here as just a bartender, I've gotten to know many, many, many people here in this room, as well as their children, grandchildren, grandparents, et cetera, et cetera. I've worked with a lot of you and a lot of them as well. I've been their mentor, their manager. I've been side by side with them. Anyone that's ever worked with me will tell you that I have no problem getting in the trenches and getting dirty. My blue collar and my rolled up sleeves are both very much so on purpose. I would very much so like the opportunity to go to work for the city of Gloucester and make sure that you are all taken care of. I'm only at the age of 39, but I also represent a lot of your children and a lot of their children and the young families that are struggling to stay here in Gloucester right now. I believe that combined with my job and my ability to be approachable to people that are in my age bracket, I can help bridge that gap between local government and those families that we're all talking about like they're not here.
Tony?
Yeah, I bring effective leadership through my vast work experience that I've been lucky enough to be able to have, and also my service record in the public arena here for the city of Gloucester has also brought me a wealth of experience to know how to get things done. I don't go on Facebook and advertise that I got stuff done. I just quietly, someone calls me, I have this problem. When you're in the Lanesville package store, ask Brett if I fixed something recently for him. And I just tackle the problem. If the problem is not fixable, I will do my best to explain that. And that's my approach to my job, is to be honest with people and not lead them down a primrose path by promising things that I cannot deliver. We need to continue, and I know the council that I'm on now, continue to support our most vulnerable among us. And I work hard, as I said, for common sense, practical solutions that put the community first. And my insight into many things in this city, because I've lived in many neighborhoods, so I know how life has been affected in those neighborhoods. And I know when we bring particularly zoning things forward, I know what has happened in those neighborhoods because I lived there. And I will waive my 30 seconds. Thank you very much. Oh, and vote for me, please, on November 4th.
First one to say that, Tony. Patty?
I have over 3 decades of public service and community engagement with Gloucester's waterfront and neighborhoods. I bring unmatched experience and deep knowledge of the issues to the race for City Council. I will strive to invite, inform, and involve citizens in public affairs. During a 32-year career at National Marine Fisheries Service in federal law enforcement, my work was rooted in problem solving and public trust. I was founder and director of the Gloucester High School sailing team, now in its 20th season. Again, Gloucester's opportunities do lie in developing ocean economies. Our proximity to the water is foundational. This provides Gloucester a comparative advantage. Investment in the seafood industry is long overdue. Gloucester fishermen feed our nation. The harvest of local, wild, clean protein has a future because food security is national security. We all deserve to eat healthy fish harvested by American fishermen. Providing training and subsidies for the next generation of fishermen will help sustain the industry. We need to prioritize investments in our local vocational training opportunities. The life science sector includes research conducted by UMass at the Hodgkins Cove Lab down the street, GMGI, both of which contribute to ocean research and provide educational training. Our strong cultural base attracts many visitors. Our labor force that supports those industries could benefit from infrastructure support, such as housing, transportation, and social services. These initiatives will strengthen economies, families, and our community, which in turn helps support families in attaining local housing. I will research city issues, share information with the public, encourage community involvement in the decision-making processes. Thank you for listening. You do have the power to make your voice heard on November 4th. I'm at the bottom of the ballot. Start from the bottom. Please move up.
So I will turn to the audience for your questions. I hope you've been writing them down. But I would personally just like to say how much the community center and I appreciate you're all coming here. I heard so much heartfelt commitment from all of you about why you're running, and I think we should acknowledge that, that you are committed to making a difference here in the community. And I also heard so many good ideas, different ones from you. I'd almost like to hope that as counselors you'll have a chance to share and build on all the respective thinking and insights that you're, that I heard tonight. Ah, yes, I know, but I'm the host. So before I turn to the audience, could we please give a round of applause to all these candidates? All right, so we have said a minute each, so I will have to pass along the microphone, and then you'll have to help with, and I guess we'll start with you. Okay, Susan.
Great. First of all, I think Gloucester's awfully lucky to have 6 great candidates who are so thoughtful and well prepared. Thank you all for being here. I've got just one factual question, and then I have a question I'd like you all to answer if you can. The factual question is, forgive my ignorance, but I don't know what AMI is.
Area median income.
Say it again?
Area median income.
Thank you. Good. So the question I have is, a number of you have talked about the importance of getting out in front with public input on these important issues. And I know how hard it is to get people's attention. It takes a long time to get people's attention, and sometimes the moment when they notice something is going on is when things are already well down the road. So do you have any ideas in this fragmented media world on strategies for getting people involved earlier?
Is my minute? Okay. Part of the issue that I think we have faced as a council is that we're bound by a lot of rules on when we can bring things up, when we can talk about things, how many councilors can be in a room when we're talking about these things. When we did the zoning amendments 3.5 years ago, we took a concerted effort to go out to the community and try to answer questions and to make ourselves available on that front. The 3A was a similar thing. We found that there was so much misinformation going on that we were able to go out and actually create opportunities for people to answer questions. We did a long, almost an hour long with Good Morning Gloucester, and met a lot of people through that, and were able to give them facts and figures and information that was actually valuable. So those are the kinds of things. Any outreach we can do publicly, individually, in small groups, we can do. We do have to be careful about open meeting law, and we're bound by all these things that prohibit us from doing the things that we might want to do to get those things done.
Yes, I agree with Jason. I was going to mention your Good Morning Gloucester stint. Also, Val, who has joined us in the back, held plenty of meetings for constituents to come and talk to her. Every time I've called Tony, he answers the phone still. I think more of that, more of meetings for people to come, like I'd mentioned earlier, over the 3A already. And we just need to continue to push. Facebook's great too. It can also be a mess. So, but it's also good for getting information out.
Sean.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what they said before. I mean, I think the information is oftentimes there. It's just how we find it and then how we go about getting a hold of it. All right, thanks for having me. But I mean, if you subscribe to the text messages from this city, then you get the text messages from this city. If you get the Gloucester Daily Times, then you get the news that we get from the Gloucester Daily Times. Unfortunately, it is scattered, and you sign up for the text messages, you sign up for the emails, and then hopefully you get one or the other. But I think our job as councilors is just to work together, to work with all of you, and to work with our ward councilors specifically to get the word out as things are developing and as they're happening.
Tony.
You ready? It's been talked about on, what our limitations are, but also during the zoning, during the zoning amendment process, Jason's substanding committee, Planning and Development, did a meeting in every single ward. They were well attended, and a lot of information was given out there. There is a lot of misinformation out there too, unfortunately, that happens. I don't know it's up to us as citizens to, decide, to find out the facts. Also, the city's Facebook page could have more information on that. Sometimes that's been a frustrating source of frustration for us. And, we talk about the Gloucester Times and, they're here tonight, but it's out of a lot of people's price range. So we need to be able to get them the information so that they can come to the meeting, watch the meeting, and watch the meeting even after the fact.
Patty?
Hi, yes. I do believe the basis is to invite the public. You have to invite them, you have to inform them, and then involve them in the process. Issues that affect people, if they can relate to that, that's when they engage. If they don't feel like it doesn't affect them, they're really not engaged, and for whatever reason, and I do understand that. Again, if there's an issue on a city agenda, I've been very effective with delivering that news. And if it affects people and they want to talk about it, we've held meetings and we've actually brought action forward. I do think in the formal process of the city council, these issues the public needs to be front-ended. It needs to come forward. I do understand open meeting law a bit. I do believe that councils can get together, but they don't deliberate, and that's the difference. So they can hold the meetings without deliberation.
Thank you, Patty. Barnaby?
So early involvement and improving engagement, one of the big challenges that they're just on a practical level is there is so much stuff. There are so many meetings, things take so long. How to streamline that or publish it? It's very true, the city website, and I'm a tech guy. I was in tech for the first 20 years of my career. The city website is difficult, the indexing is weird. You have to get familiar with it to find the information that you're looking for. It's also, as Tony has mentioned, it's an expensive thing to change. I have to admit, other than being more open than we already are to people coming forward and listening to what they're saying and what their concerns are, it's difficult to see a radical shift in engagement because the information has to be sought by people rather than, we can't push it onto them all the time. They'll get fatigued.
Okay, thank you. Another question? Have they answered everything on your minds?
Good evening, and thank you everyone for coming and for showing your enthusiasm and real, genuine interest in our city government. You all were very compelling, and I mean that sincerely. But what I am also concerned about, and we've discussed somewhat the openness of city government and front-ending some of the issues that are particularly complex. But I have to say that it also begins with the body of the city council. Doesn't necessarily always present itself as positive and open. There is a lot of tension at times, and I think at times some citizens who have made a short presentation, you have a feeling, whether it comes through specifically or not, that they are being shut down. There is body language that's visible in the room, on Zoom and so forth. So it's not so much a question, but a comment that I think as a body, that's something that you could work on to make our engagement, our civil engagement, much more active. And I thank you.
Let's take that as a question, what your thoughts are in the relationship with the public and what you might do to improve.
Am I starting? Sure. I don't think there's any room for that. There's not any room for that in my classroom. There's not any room for that in my household. And there's certainly shouldn't be any room for body language or shutting anyone down at city council. It's not acceptable. We need to work together, we need to work collaboratively, and we need to be open to you.
It turns out I can pull a lot from bartending as a city councilor. The absolute beginning of my career started at the Cheesecake Factory in 2007, and there was a lot of corporate training. What to do, what not to do, how to approach certain situations, how to handle and react to certain situations. All of that has prepared me to do what I do today in smaller places like Lobsterland, which is where I am now. We close November 23rd. But I also think that, you, just like you eat with your eyes, like I said before, I mean, you go into any restaurant and if the staff is unhappy, you're not gonna have a good time. And that correlates, excuse me, that correlates directly to how you view us while we're sitting up here or while we're sitting on whatever stage in whatever seat. And to mimic that is unacceptable behavior.
Tony?
I don't know if you remember just a short hour ago, but I made the statement that the council must model civility and accessibility. So I think that that's the short answer.
Thanks. Patty?
I do agree, it's been difficult in the public square for quite some time in Gloucester. We've had very divisive issues that's been unfortunate. I think front-ending some of this, finding common ground first, then finding the differences might help us have a better base to build on, rather than the argumentative types of conditions we found ourselves in. I'll see.
Barnaby?
Yeah, pretty much what Tony said, actually. I was having a chat at the Magtoberfest last weekend with a guy, I think his name was Chris Cook, and it turned out that he was a CO of, commanding officer of one of my neighbours. And I bumped into my neighbour today, and I said, how's it going? Oh, by the way, I met somebody who you were in the army with, and he said, great guy, leads by example, leadership by example. That's all the way through, and that's exactly Tony's thing. And we're all humans, so nobody's going to be perfect. Everybody's going to slip up from time to time. You have a bad day, you stub your toe. You've got Actually, I have a wasp sting on my head right now from earlier on at work, and it's there the whole time, but that's what if there's a bit of give and take there, accepting that people aren't perfect, but trying to be good.
My
Jason.
turn. I think absolutely civility is the way to go in terms of getting respectful discussion and dialogue going. And to hear that you feel that way means that we haven't always been very good on that front. And I guess the answer is to say I'm sorry if you felt that I was that way, and it will give me the opportunity to do better in the future. We are thinking about a lot of things up there. Sometimes we may not be as attentive as we should be, and again, I take responsibility for that. We're also very passionate people, so the occasions when we get into little fisticuffs on the council, it's out of the urge to push our point sometimes, and God knows I do that more than my share. But thank you for the feedback.
All right. Do we have any more questions? Well.
Hi, I'm curious as to all this new housing that we're talking about that we need, and we do need it. And some of you on the council already know that I've often communicated with you, sending you emails and whatnot about my concern about this, because I feel it should be affordable and nothing at this point, because how much new housing have we created, and it's far exceeds the number of affordable housing. I don't know if there is a way to control that, but to me, I don't see any other way around it other than to say affordable or nothing at this point, because people who want to create tourism jobs, those tourism jobs are going to pay what? They're going to pay nothing. So why are we so interested in supporting tourism? We should be interested in supporting businesses that will pay decent wages. Tourism does not. Tourism is very destructive to communities. It only benefits the people who own those businesses. So I don't see that as a way to go, personally. And all these people, the housing that we're wanting to create, how many more people can the island hold? I don't know how many of you drive in and out of town in that rotary. We have one rotary and a cut bridge. How much more of a population can this island really support? Logically speaking, I don't know how we can do it. And if you want to have more tourism, the only way I can see of inviting it is to have a ferry. We don't need tourists with more cars.
Well, that's a pretty substantive question for you, all wrapped up. Yeah, pass on that one, huh? Actually, we'll start with supporter of tourism. These are the
Nice easy one to wrap up the night. So for starters, we can almost synonymously take the word affordable housing and move it to attainable housing now. Affordable and attainable, I think, we're talking about people that work all over our town, people that have 2 and 3 jobs. Specifically speaking from my own experience, I work with single mothers, with blended families, who have been generations of families in town here. And they don't have a place to go buy their own home. And if we opened up some of that area so that they could expand and enjoy themselves, I don't think that's unfair. As far as our tourism being destructive, any large population anywhere is going to be destructive. It's how we respond to that and how we roll with those punches and how we adapt to it. We've been very rigid here in Gloucester, and we haven't been doing the adapting that we've needed to be doing.
Tony.
So on the tourism front, Gloucester's always had a very healthy summer tourism season. It is limited to really July and August. The businesses do tend to, it's not just the single business. It's several, it goes out into, gas stations, restaurants, the shops. It goes into, many facets of our economy. We also, when I was on the Waterways Board, we, created the launch service so that we could have that as a entry point for tourists on the water who have more money than most people do to drop in our streets. So that was one thing that we did back on the Waterways Board. And what was the other part of the question? Oh, infrastructure.
Patty.
For the housing piece, I'm not in favor of the state model AMI affordable. It doesn't bring the housing, the low-cost housing or the attainable housing, as Sean has termed, to Gloucester. And Tony has gone towards HUD. They are not going to listen to us. Again, I do think there are models that will bring low-cost attainable housing. The condos in Rocky Neck, the Asbury Park, as I told you, Alpa Road. There are ways to do this, I believe, and do it well for our community within our character. Tourism's, not to downplay it at all, we've always had tourism. It is a byproduct of our natural beauty here and the working waterfront. They'll work hand in hand, but you do have to have a balance between tourism and what the residents can support. Thank you.
Barnaby.
On the tourism front, Gloucester should have multiple economic streams to produce revenue. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. We've seen what happens with even quite big cities when they're reliant on a single industry and that industry changes or moves offshore, and the city becomes defunct effectively as a place to live. Very cheap, but defunct. So the thing about restricting new construction to only affordable housing is quite expensive to build. Housing is expensive to build. Harbour Light Homes reckon on around about $500,000 per housing unit. So that's a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom housing unit in an apartment block. It might be slightly more efficient for private construction than that, but essentially it's expensive to build, so hard to make.
Yeah,
Jason.
I'll agree with Barnaby on the front. If you say that you're only going to allow affordable housing to be built, yay, who's going to do it? Because at the end of the day, you can't a private developer cannot make that money back in a reasonable period of time. They're just not going to build. What we need to do is disincentivize single-family housing. Maybe figure out ways to encourage bonuses for multifamily construction on what would normally have been a single-family house. So you allow more lot size to be used, and develop smaller houses, maybe a little bit more densely developed. On the tourism front, but I don't think you're going to get actually, I want to quickly talk about the Gloucester Avenue project that sort of died on the vine, which is using public land along with private partners like Harbour Light to develop affordable housing, 100% affordable housing, something I think we should pursue much more aggressively. Tourism, and Barnaby's absolutely right. You can have a mix of everything. We're not going to get rid of tourism in Gloucester, and nor should we. But no, I'm not saying you are. But we need to develop other streams of income for the community. You're absolutely right.
Hannah.
I echo Barnaby and Jason. I don't know what more there is to say, but I agree with them both.
All right, Hannah. All right, another question.
I'd like to just,
I'd
like to return to the point you raised about what is the optimal population density for Gloucester.
Optimal population density.
Or capacity, yeah, Tony.
Good question. I don't have the answer, I'm afraid. We're blessed with, with the exception of droughts, we're blessed with a fair amount of water supply. The wastewater treatment plant will be able to handle more capacity with the secondary treatment built into it. It's not at capacity as of yet, and I think mainly our biggest limiting factor is how old we are and the narrowness of our streets. That's one of our major limiting factors, and there's no fix for that. We're not going to, go through an urban renewal and take people's yards and pave the streets. We just don't have that kind of financial ability. So it's hard without, being asked, off the cuff on what the answer is to that.
Patty.
Optimal population density. What's I think interesting about Gloucester is it stayed relatively stable at almost 30,000 people for quite a long time, which makes me puzzled about a housing shortage. Again, I'm not sure the units aren't there. I think the pricing and the economy is the biggest limiting factor. As Hannah pointed out, good jobs, Gloucester people qualify for mortgages, but not at the price point we're at today. I don't know how to change that or fix that. Again, building housing is part of this formula. And does that increase our population, make it so our infrastructure is stressed and strained? I do know the water and sewer downtown is a very complex and difficult problem. Thank you.
Barnaby.
So every municipality in the state has boundaries and limits on how the places are structured. So although we are an island and we have a bit more coastline than a lot of our neighbours who have lots of coastline, so in terms of picking a number to say this is how many people there should be here, this is what we, the truth is that there's no actual number, because it's a matter of personal preference, of community preference, as well as physical limitations. In terms of narrow streets, I agree, but I would certainly prefer to see more sidewalks on the narrow streets and fewer cars, frankly. I don't know how realistic that is, but I think we need to decide whether the downtown area is going to be lots of people and few cars, or just cars and few people, and that somewhere along that continuum is an answer. But there you go.
So,
Jason.
just for fun today, I spent some time on the census page, which is what I do for fun. In 1900, Gloucester's population was about 26,000. It's about a little over 30,000. And as has been pointed out, our population has stayed relatively stable. What has changed is the size of our households. Our average household now is only 2.2 people per household, whereas it used to be families of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And when we talk about the lack of units, and this is where I'll disagree with you, if you previously had 50,000 or 30,000 people in a certain number of houses, and then you've halved the size of those households or a quarter the size of those households, you don't have enough houses, okay? And then you also have people who are staying in houses far too long because they can't afford to downsize and get out of the house. So you have a lot of single people living in houses. And finally, we have about 1,500 houses that are residential that are not utilized as households. So that's 1,500 summer homes, rental unit or vacation rentals that are not being used for year-round rentals, as Tony pointed out.
Hannah.
I thought there's a specific number that we're supposed to know.
17.
I think I've already said this, but the idea of zoning updates for housing, mixed-use development, better use of commercial space, I think that could help things.
Sean.
I was not going to say 17, so I'm happy that wasn't the answer.
I was wrong.
It's 42.
I'm also number 5 on the ballot, just so everybody knows. No, I mean, if you literally pull out your phone right now, take a look at your map of Gloucester and zoom way out. There's a whole bunch of space here. We just have everybody crammed into one micro downtown area or lots of little areas. Everyone relax, take a breath. I'm not saying we're building houses all over the green area. What I'm asking you to do, and I'm truly asking you to do, is go out and speak to the people that are in my generation. Ask them their opinions. Ask them what they would like to see done with those spaces. Everyone's so worried about how we're leaving Gloucester and we need to keep it the same, but nobody's thinking about how we're building it for the people that are gonna inherit it from us. These are important thoughts, and the dialogue needs to start at home.
All right, thank you. Do we have another question? We've gotten some tough ones. Thank you for that.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Keep them coming, I just heard, right. A lot of positive things, and then here's the challenge. Anyone else? Sure. All right.
Maybe this has already been answered over and over. How are we going to increase engagement by people my age? I am 38. Most people my age are overworked. If they have young families, they are way too busy with their children. There just isn't enough time in the day to get involved in community issues. And yes, we do understand that these issues are super important, but we just don't have the energy and the time to deal with that. So I realize that you're gonna get the word out there by Facebook and Gloucester Times and Good Morning Gloucester, but what are you actually going to do to involve the young generation in the city's future?
All right, who does that start with Patty then? Yeah.
That is a good question, Sarah. I'll turn inward for this a bit. At 38 years old, I was not engaged at all. I was busy in employment and with family. It wasn't anything on my radar. How do you reach younger people? What I would do is younger and older folks, actually, I'd like to more poll, how do they really get their news? And what are they in need of for information? I don't know those things. I really don't. But I think it's something to explore and something to work on. I'm sure some of the younger generation is involved. I've touched them through this campaign now, but very quickly. Thank you.
Barnaby.
Ooh, what to say? It is a good question. What I would like to see is more of what was done on the Human Rights Commission, where they opened up the commission so that there were 2 high schoolers who were allowed to sit on the commission as non-voting members. It's a very small step in the right direction. When I was at Planned Parenthood, the governing body of a multi-billion-dollar charity had to have youth representation on its board of governance. So you got all these people who sit in the UN and a couple of students. And that kind of model, I think, is really positive. It's very difficult to square the circle of, I'm just too busy to be involved in these things. It's really hard. I was lucky, I was a stay-at-home parent, so I got to spend more time than most people get to spend on long, complex, involved issues. So,
Jason,
My
your
turn.
thoughts?
To paraphrase President Obama, don't boo, vote. The important thing is to get out and vote. Get your friends, get your neighbors, the people that are in your social circle, to get out and vote. We are woeful in our voting in the city, okay, in our country in general, but I worry about what we're doing. We did some information seeking on terms of who was voting, and people in the 18 to 39 range are woefully, almost criminally underrepresented when it comes to actual voting. So that's the first step. Then find an issue. Find an issue that is important to you and stick with it. Education was what got me into running for city council in the first place, because I was concerned where my kids were going to go to school and the future they had there. That broadened into other issues, but it also puts you into touch with people who have similar concerns with you. And when you build that kind of momentum, you can actually be a force for change.
Hannah.
Barnaby stole my.
To be a force for change.
Hannah.
Barnaby stole my.
How quickly the community world opens up as soon as you plug yourself into something like that. I'm firsthand, at 38, I wasn't planning for running for city council, but at 39, I'm ready to rip into it, and we're doing it. Public interaction, the more we can talk to each other, the more we can get a healthy conversation going without, getting upset, getting hurt, and going and pigeoning in the other side of the room. That's all important. But yeah, let us come to you, and if that's volunteering at different things for schools or different things, like I'll be at Stage Fort Saturday afternoon. Anybody wants to come down and hang out at the obstacle course, come on in.
And last, Tony.
Yeah, I too, I was still working when I got involved. I worked at the wastewater plant, and we were in somewhat of a crisis here for our sewer treatment in our unsewered areas, and that's when I got involved with I applied with the state to become involved in the on-site wastewater treatment. And from there, I was a stay-at-home dad after that, and was PTO president at the schools. Those are little things that you can get in, but again, you have to have the time. That is the real commodity that people are so starved of. I think that we need to assist the administration in outreach to young people for our boards and commissions. And our boards and commissions need to all meet in the evening. Morning meetings, afternoon meetings, they just do not work. And I think that's something I plan to tackle soon is that we mandate that all meetings be in the evening, or after 5 p.m. at least.
All right, thank you. Any last question? The midnight hour is about to strike anyway. Well, I do have to say that, you know, this is being recorded. Thank you, 1623. Yeah. And a final repetition, I found so much of great interest. I intend to listen to it and write it all down, and hope that many of your ideas and your concerns are reflected in the next 2 years as we go forward together as a city. So thank you again.